First, though, let's go through some of the week's top stories with the help of commentator and broadcaster and the founder of Octopus TV, Andrew EBORN, who joins us in the studio. Andrew, what's caught your eye this week?
Oh, my goodness. An avalanche of alliterations has caught my eye. We went from Peppa Pig to pork pie plotters to Tory turncoats and also saving Boris's bacon. What I love about this, and this is a real delight because we've got both of you here, and serving...
Thank you.
Serving Conservative MPs, you can give us an insight into whips and what whipping is all about. Because it's all about bribery and all about blackmail is what they're saying in the press. You can help give that insight, because this is what they say. And the press, I think there's a wonderful little cartoon which sort of summarises it here. There were no Tory whips blackmailing. P.S. We know where you live. I love it. So tell me about this, because it was Stanley Baldwin, wasn't it, who said that there is no relationship between men so close as that between a Prime Minister and his chief whip. And I guess the real question is, how far can you go? And what I love about the juxtaposition of you two is that you, 250 times you've gone against the government. You are the perfect rebel, and you were Deputy
Chief Whip.
Come on.
Well, we can tell you from both sides. Go on, Philippa. I will tell you from the Deputy Chief Whip side, and you can tell it from a serial rebel.
I think there should be some mystery about the relationship between whips and backbenchers. I don't like all of this on the front pages. I think the mystery should be protected. But look, the thing is, the job of the whips is to get the government's business through, and the job of MPs is to try and get the best for their constituents and the best for the country. And the bit that I don't think has come out of all this is this sort of blackmail, bullet. Well, it can work both ways. So if there's a tight vote in Parliament... A good backbench MP would say to the whips, look, hold on a minute, unless I get this bypass, or I'm not voting with you. I'm not voting with you. So
it goes both ways.
It's a negotiation, isn't it? And I don't really see. It's just, let's just be grown up about it. It's a negotiation, and each are trying to get the best out of it. I always think that John Bercow actually had the best quote about the whip when he was a Conservative MP. He said that his relationship with the whips was built on trust and understanding, and he didn't trust them and they didn't understand him.
I guess the question, though, because everybody's asking about this, is what methods? How far is too far? And when there's allegations about bullying, because you're right, you're turning around, and it is sort of bribery, isn't it? Because you're offering something in exchange for support. So the question is, how far can you go? In your experience, what's been the worst?
OK, well, I'll give you... I was the Deputy Chief Whip as the Brexit votes were going through.
Yes.
And below me, which was the senior former Cabinet Minister I had to whip, was Ken Clarke.
Oh, come on.
Right. So let me tell you, no bullying, no blackmailing, no cajoling could have got him to do anything other than his whole life was about Remain and that he believed in the EU. So we would have a sort of a serious chat. And I guess the best I could ever possibly hope for was that he would abstain.
Right.
So I'd have a serious chat with him. I'd say, come on, Ken, you know your own mind, you're doing this, but look, really think about this. Don't vote against us.
And there's a really good gig on at Ronnie Scott's tonight.
Exactly. or the other one I could do, business is finishing early today, Ken. Are you sure you don't want to clear off and get down to Ronnie Scott's? So what you've got to do is tailor your conversation to each member.
Right.
And so there will be things, well, why are you doing this now? We're going to win anyway. What are you doing this for? You won't have a future. You won't have an opportunity. You might not get to the front bench. Mind you, didn't work with the Maastricht rebels. They all became the front bench. But they were told all those years ago their career was over. And the other thing, it works both ways as well. If you've got your backbenchers saying we're not happy, we're going to revolt en masse, 101 for, the Plan B, new restrictions that you come in for, you must take a message back from that as Prime Minister. Why are they all wanting to rebel? Maybe you're not following Conservative policies. So it's a two-way street.
What do you think, Andrew? What do you think is acceptable?
Well, I think you're right. There's a negotiation. What you've just described, tickets to Ronnie Scott, sounds acceptable. Telling people we're not going to fund a school is unacceptable. Have you heard of similar sort of things happening? Is that credible?
Well, I think what people will say, and this is when you've come to the end of your tether, people will say things that they should not have said. Right. And then I think you, as a good whip, should walk away. If you cannot, at that moment in time, think of something to maybe get somebody on board, you don't go there. You have totally lost the argument. And then, remember, you need this person to be with you forever for the full 5-year Parliament, not just for that one vote. You can't use all of your goodwill for one vote. So I say, walk away. Think of another plan. Screaming and shouting match is never going to get them on board. And people entrench in their views.
Have you noticed how we're supposed to be asking Andrew the questions?
He's turned it round. You know what it's because he's a barrister. That's what it is.
But it's the perfect opportunity.
No, I agree.
People don't understand about whips. We see that extraordinary thing that Michael did. I don't know if you saw his video with a fabricant, Michael Fabricant's video about whipping and all that sort of stuff and the reason for it. So people do want to know, how far can you go? There's threats that there's a recording out there. So is it likely, firstly, that somebody would have said, we can withhold money if you don't vote? And because you've had 250 plus where you've said no, you're your own man, you've got your voice, is it likely that that sort of thing could happen?
Look, I think if you rebel, you accept that you're not going to be done any great favours by the party, or you have to accept that there is a possibility that may happen. Nobody needs to say it to you overtly. You just know that that may be a consequence of it. But you've got to do what you think is right.
I think that's in a way that's bad whipping. You've gone beyond what you should. And like I said to you, if you're so entrenched and now is not the moment, you can't win somebody over with argument or reason. You either report back, as I would, we've lost this person. Yeah. You've got an 80-seat majority. I don't need you. So you don't need to have a big fallout with them. We've lost them. And then move on to somebody else who might be more amenable.
Right.
Okay.
So what caught your eye?
Well, we've got obviously more from you later. You'll be with us a little bit later on. A fun story for me, and that has to be Nilly, the little Jack Russell, who was in a dangerous, precarious position there on the dangerous sort of mud flats just outside Portsmouth. Could have disappeared, but how did they get that dog back? How did they save him from the brink, from danger? It wasn't the police, it wasn't anybody out in boats. No, it was a drone with a sausage that brought him over. And the only reason I thought this absolutely ingenious, because I thought I need to use this myself.
I'd get up in the morning for that.
Exactly.
You'd do that.
It's a full English for me. No measly sausage or bacon. It's full English for me.
That's what I thought. Drone into the bedroom. You're not going as far as the full English. See the way the negotiation takes
I love it.
Bacon butty or a sausage, but wangle it. Move him out. Anyway, Andrew, we will see you later back with the papers. But the government... Thanks for joining us on the Saturday selection here on GB News, on TV, online and now on DAB Plus digital radio as well. I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis. Coming up, we want to know how the people who voted in Christian Wakeford as a Tory MP in Bury South feel about him switching sides to Labour.
But first, let's go through some of the stories that have caught our eyes this Saturday. The broadcaster, lawyer and founder of Octopus TV, Andrew EBORN, joins us in the studio.
How are you?
Very good.
It is lovely to see my wonderful exercise in PE. This is what we do with Phil and Esther. It's got to be the perfect start to any day. I love it. I always hunt, as you know, apart from the usual doom and gloom we get in the papers, for some feel-good stories. And what I like is our good friend Rob
I reached out to him the other
has
week.
come up with it. He's going to get rid of banal train announcements. Isn't that good news? You know, the great thing. So what he said, the Transport Secretary has commissioned a cross-industry review and called for a bonfire of the banalities. See what he did there? I love it when that sort of stuff happens. So things like when you're leaving a station, they don't say, look, you need to have your ticket ready, or when you're in a quiet carriage, make sure you're nice and quiet. What I do love, though, is a lovely story about Margaret McCullum. Do you know Margaret McCullum? She is a lady. Her husband, many years ago, was Oswald Lawrence, and he recorded the wonderful announcement, "Mind the Gap."
Yes.
And he sadly died. Lawrence sadly died in 2003. Really sad story. And they then replaced Oswald's announcement with a robotic "Mind the Gap." And she was distressed, really distressed about it. So she approached the company and asked for a cassette recording. And they thought, rather than just give her a cassette, we'll do one better than that. We will put Oswald back, which is great news. So at Embankment Station on the Northern Line, you can now hear Oswald announcing Mind the Gap, and you will find Margaret McCullum there listening to her husband's voice. And I think love conquers everything.
I'm with Grant Shapps on this, actually. One of the things that really irritates me about train journeys and announcements is that I've never understood. I try and be logical, don't I? I don't understand why. I can understand why just before the train sets off, they tell you where it's stopping at. Because if you're on the wrong train, you want to get off, don't you?
Yeah.
But have you not noticed, whenever you get on a train sets off, and they say, you're now on the such and such train, and it's going to stop at these stops, and you think, what's the point of telling me? What's the point of telling me now? Tell me before we set off. Don't tell me now we've just set off.
I think you're absolutely right. We're drowning in information, aren't we? And I think it's a cacophony of sound all the time. And I think if we can make sure that messages are really, really clear and do that when needed, that's the relevant point, isn't it?
But I think that once they've got a sound system, they're loving the sound of, oh, you can buy this, and everything that you can buy from the cafe. If you're ever on a phone call and the speaking starts, you think, forget it, we'll call you back later, because this is going to go on for an interminable amount of time.
You're right. Well, the other thing, Esther, as well, and Phil, is that it's those announcers who really want to be comedians.
Yes.
You've had those who've been on the train. I'm going to do my 45-minute routine.
Yeah. I do thousands and thousands of journeys, but I have heard some very funny announcers, actually. It is limited, they're not many, but I have come across a few, and I did think they should be stand-ups. What else have you found in the paper?
A number of other things as well. The sad, sad loss of Meat Loaf. Yesterday, 74 years old, and an extraordinary life, because he was an sort of expected superstar, if you like. And it really is, as you know, I always celebrate failure. I always say that if necessity is the mother of invention, failure is the father of success. Well, he actually got tremendous success, 100 million albums worldwide, Bat Out of Hell, I'm sure it's in your collection, listen to it every morning. But it took a long time. And what happened, because he didn't write the songs himself, he went through a period where he was very upset about the industry. He got very grumpy about it. He suffered bankruptcy. There were reports of him going into record stores, seeing all these things on Bat Out of Hell on the shelves and taking them, throwing on the floor in a tantrum. So an extraordinary thing. What I also loved about him as well, though, he was a great actor. So he was in the Rocky Horror Picture Show. You remember that fantastic movie? He played Eddie there. He was iconic because people will say he was a fantastic singer. What he was a fantastic performer. And he could take any song, but he could read, he could sing the phone book in those days and make it entertaining. So it's all that wonderful, big performance. And he was a very patient man as well, sometimes. Everywhere he went, he would always have that glorious line, say, I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that. And people always say, well, what was that? And he basically, he played his tongue-in-cheek, which is what I always love, doesn't take himself too seriously. He was in the Spice World, the movie, one of your favourites, I know.
Absolutely,
Every morning you wake up with that. But it's basically, in that movie, you will recall that the toilet always used to get blocked. So they asked Meat to basically say, would you unblock the toilet? And he'll sort of say, well, I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that. Wonderful things. But people have always said, and so he one time actually did on VH1 Storytellers. He said, look, what I did one time, people asked the question, what is that? And he came up with this wonderful chart and said, because people have wrongly reported, and they've wrongly reported in the press as well today, so I can exclusively reveal here a revelation. Again, I always do this for GB News, it's got to be good. Exclusive revelation. It's actually, the clue is in every single line of the song. So he, for example, said, there are different lines every time before each chorus. I'll never forgive myself if we don't go all the way tonight. I'm sorry, all the way tonight. I will do anything for love, but I won't do that. He then says, I'll never stop dreaming of you every night of my life. I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that. He then turns around, forget the way you feel right now. I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that. Re-look.
Join in a chorus soon.
I felt
every single line. That's what it is. And a real charismatic character. He leaves a phenomenal legacy. Everybody dig out your Bat Out of Hell song, play it now, and what a treasure.
Now, I remember Newmarket Racecourse booked him for a concert. They have these concerts after race meetings on a Friday night, and they booked him for a concert, and the person at Newmarket Racecourse said they found out subsequently that he's incredibly unreliable. He said he's really unreliable, he never shows up. We're absolutely panicking that we've booked him, paid a fortune, and and he's not going to show up. But he did show up, and it was brilliant.
Oh, he is brilliant. And they also had they've now done a stage version of it as well. I went along, I don't know if you see it. Get along to see that, because it's like the soundtrack to our lives, isn't it? Fantastic songs, fantastic collaboration with Cher and various others. They've all come out and say, look, what an incredible man, what an incredible performer, what an incredible
We'll go to other stories, but just say I remember having the pleasure of interviewing him and talking about his spiritual side and what he wanted and what was his motivations.
Yeah,
exactly. But I have to say, how energetic, energised, funny he was. Come on, Esther, let's go out for a drink and all this. He was one of the funnest, biggest, largest characters. So I've got a story here. You might have seen it during the week. It's Giles Coren here in The Times. He's talking about you can't hide your hot tub from the taste police. But basically what it came from, this week people are saying, aren't they, now that we've got to future-proof all of our homes, we can't have conservatories. He's then looking at, well, you can't have this, you now can't have hot tubs, what about home gyms, what about wet rooms, what about his and her vanity units, all of the things we can't have. But it came from that story this week about conservatories, and they must be banned to history because we've got to future-proof houses. What do we think to that?
Wasn't there an eco-warrior on the lecturing everybody you shouldn't have a conservatory from their conservatory?
It's hilarious.
Irony clearly isn't dead.
It's totally that sort of, you must insulate your home, but I won't insulate mine. It's that sort of hypocrisy, isn't it? What I love, what we are getting now, as you know, I'm a futurist, so we look at patterns of behaviour, what's going to happen in the future. I can tell you the future of homes is all about connectivity. People will find out that you go into the home and it will follow you wherever you want to do. It will basically be smart homes is what the future. Yes. So you will find that all your electronic devices are connected. You'll find out that it will assist you in your daily life. And looking at that sort of stuff, one of the big scares of this week was all about Apple and the tracking device. And they get really worried about that. Basically, it's a device that if you lose your phone, it's supposed to be really, really helpful. One of the scary things about it is people have been using it for tracking individuals. Well, it's a tracking device, no surprise there. So what we need to do is flatten the learning curve. Work out about technology, work out about the way to do that, because the way that people understand it, in the same way as they understand politics, get rid of the jargon, work on that sort of basis, and that's a much better future. Conservatories, I think we should have them. If they want to have conservatories, get them going.
Absolutely. All those people with them, all those getting an extra room on the ground floor, I think we should have them, but technology, absolutely.
I can't say I often read the Financial Times, but this did catch my eye. There's many things I don't understand, and the city is definitely one of them. It's an absolute law unto itself. But I noticed that Netflix lost £48 billion in market value on Wall Street yesterday. And the thing that I don't understand is it wasn't because it was losing customers. It was because its growth in customers was slowing down. And on the back of that, it lost £48 billion in
I'll tell you why. Obviously, in the pandemic, everybody was watching the streaming platforms. The difficulty is it's fear. And I always say, we've got a war against the virus. And the first casualty in any war is the truth. And the way that things happen is that people get scared, markets get scared. So if you make a prediction, and they predicted certain revenue and so on and so forth, the market gets very, very frightened, and they maybe overreact.
Yeah. Well, equally, I'd also say they were overselling themselves to actually still have growth, but not as big as you find, and you've got a £48 billion loss. There is a problem. And I would have said some of those accountants should have been checking out, was it realistic that they could maintain that growth even if you'd have remained in a pandemic? Because surely they would have peaked at a certain amount. So really, some of these high-flying wizards in the city really need to look at the detail, which is what a lot of people say now about companies. Do they know what's happening, and are they being sold over expectations? Now, I love this little story if we've got time. It was in the Telegraph magazine, and it just brought a smile to my face. It was about the VW Beetle, and it was 50 years, 3 generations, one good little runner. It started off in the family with Grandad, who was the Reverend. It then passed to his children, and it is now with the grandchild there, but they've kept this. He hasn't named it yet. He might. He also says he was delighted that the insurance is a little more than £300. Apparently, vintage cars are fairly cheap to protect because their owners treat them very well and don't drive very far.
Are they from Yorkshire, these people? not wanting to buy a new car.
You might well know them.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I'm impressed.
I love those first cars. It's like Herbie, isn't it? I mean, that was that car, the VW Beetle. What were your first cars?
Mine was my mum's. I took her little Renault off her.
Okay.
Mine was, but my first one that I bought was a little Daewoo. It was a second-hand, oldish one, and got around in that. Oh no, Mini Micra was my first.
The first car I bought was a Kia Pride. A Kia Pride was the first car I bought.
My first one was a Lotus Elite.
Oh, that's why you asked us.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why you asked
It's
us.
trumped us there, hasn't
It was
he?
a second-hand one. They had these wonderful ones which were supposed to go up like that, the headlights. But it sort of did this because it was malfunctioning. And I'm sure the only reason it had a heated rear window was to keep your hands warm while you pushed it. It was very unreliable.
Andrew, hope to see you again very soon.
Enjoyed to see you.
Wonderful having you.
Great to see you, yeah, absolutely.
Now, one of the biggest political stories of the week.